Apple Blitz with Anthony Rivardo and Matt O'Leary.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Big Apple Blitz. What is going on? Matt O'Leary alongside Anthony Rivardo. Anthony, we've made it through the NFL draft. We're at the other side. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling great. I thought that the New York Giants had a really solid NFL draft class. It was a wild weekend. A lot of trades on day two that surprised me. The NFC East got a whole lot tougher, which has been one of my biggest takeaways from the draft. But overall, feeling good about the way that the Giants and the Jets performed in this draft.
Yeah, I'm with you. It was a marathon weekend of coverage like it always is. But I'm pretty big fan of both of these drafts from both the New York Jets and the New York Giants, both teams from New York getting a little bit better over the weekend. So we're going to go through, we'll take a look at each draft class. We'll give our thoughts on everything, maybe give a grade out as well. So I have the Jets pulled up here. I can minimize this so we see the full thing. Draft picks end up being at number 11, Olu Fashanu. Malachi Corley at pick 65, Braylon Allen, running back out of Wisconsin at 134, Jordan Travis out of Florida State, Isaiah Davis, running back South Dakota State, Quantez Stiggers from the CFL, and Jalen Key, defensive back out of Alabama. So when you take a look at this draft class, Anthony, what are some of your biggest takeaways?
Well, one of the biggest takeaways that I have is the fact that the Jets were able to land a wide receiver without trading up for one. I thought that was a huge win for them, landing Malachi Corley all the way at pick number 65. There was a lot of speculation going into day two. Maybe they'd trade up, try and get somewhere into the 50s or the 40s and draft a wide receiver. They stood pat at 65, and they landed a wide receiver talent who I think is very dynamic and a really exciting player. I know really high on a lot of people's draft boards. So that's one of my favorite takeaways there. But overall, a lot of offensive talent. You know, they really loaded up on the offensive side of the ball. They've got a developmental quarterback in Jordan Travis. Braylon Allen is a solid running back prospect out of Wisconsin. And, of course, Malachi Corley, who I mentioned, and Olu Fashanu. So a lot of offensive talent. I think that the Jets made it a point to prioritize that side of the ball, and I think that was the right strategy.
Yeah, I like the early lean on the offensive side of the ball to get this draft going. And then, I'll get to some of the things the Jets did on day three in a second. But the last time we spoke, it was only after the first round. And I liked the offensive line pick. We both did, but kind of came away with the Jets need to get a receiver here. And they moved up briefly. They didn't jump up into the second round. They moved up to the first pick of the third round to get Malachi Corley and didn't really have to give up a whole lot to get up there. And I was surprised by this. They had supposedly they had Malachi Corley as their fourth wide receiver in this draft, which I don't know if I in particular am that high on Malachi Corley, but I think he's going to be a really unique weapon for this offense. I mean, his nickname is the Yak King, yards after the catch king. And for Aaron Rodgers quarterbacking this team, I just think we're going to see a lot of check downs and screens and just trying to get the ball in Corley's hands and have him do some things yards after the catch to add a different, dynamic to this offense the Jets have.
Yeah, and that's really the word for Malachi Corley is dynamic. He is a player that makes plays in space. As you mentioned, the Yak King. You just want to get the ball in his hands. You want to scheme together ways to get him the ball in space and let him go to work. And once you do that, his contact balance is elite. It's really hard to bring him down. And one of the points that was made throughout the offseason while people were evaluating Malachi Corley is with the banning of the hip drop tackle, how do you bring this guy down? Malachi Corley becomes an even more dynamic player at the next level than he was in college because there's one less way that you can actually take down Malachi Corley. He's already tough as it is to take down with no hip drops. He's going to be really tough to stop. So I think that he is going to be a very exciting player. I'm curious to see how Hackett and the Jets get him involved and what his role and usage is going to be early on. I don't think that he's going to be that secondary outside wide receiver maybe that the Jets were looking for, but as a guy who rotates in, makes plays as a gadget player early on in his career, and then maybe develops into a better receiver and becomes a more complete package down the line, I think there's a lot of potential with Malachi Corley, and it is a really exciting draft pick.
Yeah, and something else I wanted to add on Corley that you got me thinking with the banning of the hip drop tackle. I wonder if they see a role for him as a returner with some of these new kick return rules that the NFL is implementing. They had Xavier Gipson do it last year, and he had a huge moment in the first game of the season against Buffalo, but then was kind of quiet after that. He was fine, and if he ends up being the returner again this year, I don't think anyone's complaining, but I think the upside with there's more upside with Malachi Corley, who they took at 65. And I'm kind of just curious if they're going to end up utilizing him in a special teams role. So not only could he be kind of that gadget guy, I know high-end comp Deebo Samuel for him. I would love if the Jets able to find a player like that. But even if he's kind of just, a gadgety kind of receiver weapon in your offense and a good returner for you, I think that's a hit for a third-round pick.
No, I think that would be a massive plus to get in the third round. Just a player who can at least contribute, bring some touchdowns into the fold. And I think Corley definitely has a potential. And I like what you mentioned there with the new kickoff rules. It's going to be a lot different. You do need like tackle breakers now. You need guys who can make people miss in a phone booth on this new kickoff design. Or kick return design rather. So I think that Corley is going to be a far more valuable player in that role than we've seen from players in the past. And again, like I said, a lot of potential there. He didn't really look like a polished wide receiver at Western Kentucky, but he played really well at the Senior Bowl, ran some good routes. It showed that upside to become a more polished wide receiver. Maybe eventually he does start playing on the outside. He's got enough strength to do so. It's just about getting that technical ability refined for Malachi Corley. Again, playing at Western Kentucky, it's not like he was going up against Alabama every week and all these other great SEC teams. So he's got time to grow here. And now I think with the Jets, they don't have to rush him onto the field right away in that role. They could use him as that gadget player, but again, he has that upside to develop into something more. I think that one comparison that I would make is Wan'Dale Robinson of the New York Giants. His first few weeks of his career, he was very much a gadget player. It was pretty much just catching bubble screens and end arounds and little stuff like that. Now he's one of our best wide receivers. He is a slot receiver, sure, but he goes downfield and he does make plays. Came up big down the field on a flea flicker against the Packers in that upset win led by Tommy DeVito. So you could see some of these players start their careers as gadget guys and then just develop into something more with good coaching and with opportunity. So I think that Malachi Corley definitely has that ability, again, to develop into becoming a more complete wide receiver down the line.
These next two guys I kind of wanted to group together. The Jets take two running backs, which was surprising. Braylon Allen at 134 and Isaiah Davis at 173. Something else that is just surprising with this is both those guys are similar stylistically. Like they're both bigger, more bruising running backs instead of going kind of like one as a bruiser, the other as a speedster. But the Jets kind of had two home run threats already. Like we know Breece Hall is going to be the bell cow running back here, but the running back they took last year, Izzy Abanikanda, more of that just pure speedster, third down kind of back. With Allen and Davis, they're kind of short yardage, pound the rock up the middle. Now this is the fifth year in a row that Joe Douglas has drafted a running back. It seems like he really likes those day three swings at running back, which I get. There's a very high hit rate here, but I was surprised they went back to the well on running back with Isaiah Davis. Of the two, I think my preference is Braylon Allen, and I think he has a real good shot to be this team's RB2 behind Breece Hall this season.
Yeah, I won't lie. I don't know much about Isaiah Davis. I thought that was also a very surprising selection considering they already went to the running back well with Braylon Allen. But I do like Braylon Allen a lot. He's a player that was mentioned a lot in the comment sections of some of our Fireside Giants videos. I know that there's a lot of Giants fans who did really want him in the later rounds. They went with another direction at running back, and we'll obviously get into that later. But Braylon Allen, I mean, that's a powerful back. Like, that's a guy who you put on those third and short situations, fourth down and 1 yard to go, goal line situations. Guy brings a lot of power to the table, and it's a different kind of dynamic and skill set than what you're getting with Breece Hall. Of course, we know Breece Hall, great receiver out of the backfield. He could really do it all. But when you want somebody to punch the defense in the mouth and really be powerful, I think Braylon Allen steps in and he has that ability. I mean, you could find videos of him on the internet squatting like ridiculous amounts of weights and doing these big workouts, because he's just a piece of muscle basically, and he's just a powerful back. And I think that's what you really like about Allen and gets you to buy in on him as a mid-round pick.
So some of his measurables really jumped off the table to me. So we know he's big and he carries it well with, as you said, he's kind of just like a hunk of muscle, 6'1", 235. But what I was really impressed with, NFL Draft Buzz, they have a database on all these prospects. They had his 40 time at 4.4. So 4.4 speed with that size is absolutely insane to me. So yes, he's that bruiser, and you're going to see him a lot, running on the interior. He's not going to really be bouncing runs outside. But I think he has some sneaky breakaway speed that maybe some aren't anticipating, because they just look at his height and weight and go, oh, this guy's kind of just going to be, glorified fullback, when in reality, he has a little bit of speed here.
No, he does. You're right. He's very athletic. So obviously, I mentioned on those fourth and short, third and short situations, he can power through and pick up that ugly yardage, but he does have that breakaway speed. Say it's a fourth and short and all of a sudden a hole opens up. You can trust that Braylon Allen's got enough speed to quickly accelerate through that hole and turn that play into a much bigger play. So, and one other thing about Braylon Allen that I like, that I remember from doing some film study on him prior to the draft, great pass protector. And that might be an underrated aspect to factor into this equation here when you're talking about this Jets offense. Obviously, they did some work on the offensive line with Olu Fashanu, but having a pass protecting running back like that, like Braylon Allen, who can really lay the wood in the backfield to keep your quarterback upright, don't ever underestimate the value of having a great pass protector in the running back.
1000%. That's where I was going to go with this next is someone on Jets Twitter, Joe Blewett. He does coverage over at Jet X Factor. He was tweeting out some film clips, and one of the clips he tweeted out was Allen in pass protection, and Braylon Allen quote tweeted and said, I'm going to have Aaron Rodgers playing another 10 years. And I was like, this is exactly what we want to hear from the new running back here. But it's important to call that out. I know that's like very low on the totem pole usually of things we care about on these running backs, but last year the Jets backs, any of the four that they had, were horrendous in pass protection. Breece Hall gets a pass because of how good he is at everything else, catching passes out of the backfield and as a runner. But Izzy Abanikanda allegedly couldn't get on the field until like week 13 because he couldn't pass protect. That was the excuse they gave every week, was that he's not ready as a pass protector. Dalvin Cook was horrible at it. And Michael Carter, who they ended up releasing, wasn't very good at it either. So while that's something that, again, like I said, isn't necessarily the sexy thing to talk about, is definitely a strength for Braylon Allen. I think is going to be pretty useful.
It's a huge strength, and it's one of the reasons that he'll get on the field early and often in his career. Having somebody who can go out there and make those plays and pass protection and be a little bit of a added bonus to your lineup in that regard. It's just going to get him more opportunities to be on the field as a rookie, which is important because you never know. Maybe he goes out there, the offensive coordinator Hackett sends him out there to be a pass protector, and maybe Rodgers identifies a blitz and says, Allen, run a swing route. You got to go out there. He checks it at the line of scrimmage, then throws him a ball, opportunity, ball in Braylon Allen's hands. That's how it starts. That's how it ends, right? That's really what you want from these rookies, is just they got to have a way to get on the field. And that's almost like their ticket punched. Once they're on the field, anything can happen. And Braylon Allen has a few reasons to be on the field early in his career and allow him to accelerate his development and really get going and make an impact for this Jets offense.
Good question from Dan here. He asked, could Isaiah Davis be a special teams exclusive? I guess it's possible. He didn't really play, from my understanding, a ton of special teams at South Dakota State, but maybe that changes in the NFL. I almost wonder, Anthony, if maybe they view him as someone who could maybe transition to more of like a fullback or H-back role in this offense.
Yeah, and I think that's a possibility. Again, I don't know a whole ton about Isaiah Davis. That's not somebody that I got around to prior to the draft. But I guess just kind of in that vein, sometimes these players get drafted in these later rounds just as players. They have to give them a positional designation. But sometimes teams will just draft these guys and say, okay, we just like his skill set and his athleticism. Let's just stick him in there somewhere. And I think that's also when we get into this Giants running back that they drafted. That's a point that I want to make there, because he's got the ability to do more than one thing, but overall just an athlete and a football player. And sometimes these teams just look for athletes and football players and they just stick them in wherever they really can.
Couple more things on the Jets draft before we get over to those New York Giants. Jordan Travis, your boy out of Florida State, another Florida native. What'd you think of the developmental swing at quarterback for the Jets.
Man, I love it. I'm very happy for Jordan Travis. Again, Benjamin School, protege, played 5 minutes up the road. One of my best friends, football buddy. He played on the same team as him. Just very happy for Jordan Travis because this feels like the perfect landing spot for him. Now he gets to sit behind Aaron Rodgers, learn from one of the GOATs, get ready to play. Not now. He's injured, so he's not going to get on the field soon anyway, recovering from that gruesome leg injury. But Travis has like a long while before he needs to see the field, so he can really take his time, grow, develop behind the scenes. And then because he is the young guy that the Jets brought in this draft class, and you imagine that they're not going to be picking high over the next couple of years, Jordan Travis probably gets the first crack at the starting job when Rodgers retires or moves on. And that's something that I'm really excited about, just personally, for Jordan Travis. I want to see this kid succeed. So I don't think he could have landed in a better situation. Like, this really was the one for him, to have that opportunity to develop and take his time and get a starting gig or an opportunity at a starting gig down the road. And Jordan Travis, good football player, and learning from Aaron Rodgers is only going to make him better, learning from everybody on the Jets staff. So I really like this pick as a developmental quarterback. And because of that injury, he's not going to be the QB2 this season. Most likely he'll be the QB3, but that's why you signed Tyrod Taylor. And Tyrod Taylor is a very capable backup quarterback. And maybe if Jordan Travis continues to develop, you don't need Tyrod Taylor next season. You move on from him. Jordan Travis is QB2, and then maybe eventually rises his way up to QB1 somewhere way down the road if he does play well and really develop. So I really love this landing spot. I love the pick for the Jets and the landing spot for Jordan Travis personally. I think it was a perfect marriage.
Yeah, for a very rare instance, the New York Jets are actually a good landing spot for a young quarterback here. They have good weapons in place, a good offensive line, hopefully after, adding some free agents and some nice depth with Olu Fashanu and some nice running backs as well. And you get to sit behind not only Aaron Rodgers, but also Tyrod Taylor. And I would just, if I'm Jordan Travis, man, you just got to be right on their hip. Like, the both of those guys, you kind of just take in everything they have over the next 2 years. And as you mentioned, it's going to be a little while here before he would get that chance as a starter. And that's best case scenario, that he ends up as a future starter in this league. You never know as a 5th round pick, but even as a worst case scenario, I think this is someone who could be a cheap backup on this team for, the entirety of his rookie deal. As you mentioned, who knows what happens after this year? Maybe they decide he improved and we're good with him as QB2 and we can move on from Tyrod Taylor and save some money. But I'm looking forward to see him in preseason games over the next couple of years and see how much he's able to grow, because the talent is there. If it wasn't for the injury, this is someone who I think would have went a lot higher than pick 171.
I agree with you. I think that this is great value considering where he was selected and where he probably would have been selected if not for that injury. Maybe he was a 3rd round pick without the injury. And so I think it is tremendous value. And you're 100% right. Like, his ability to develop here into a long-term backup is also something that you have to take note of, because having a rookie quarterback or a quarterback on a rookie contract, we always talk about the value that has for teams like the Texans, for example, because they're able to maximize their roster building expertise now and build around a cheap contract in CJ Stroud. But nobody really talks as much about having a backup quarterback on that rookie contract. Rather than paying a guy like a Tyrod $5 million a season, you're paying like less than $1 million in some instances for these backup QBs. And that's a lot of money that can be spread to other areas on your rosters. So long-term, Jordan Travis, whether he ends up developing into a potential starter, or even if he just develops into being your capable backup for years on that rookie deal, it's very, very valuable to have that.
Absolutely. Let's group these last two guys together before we get to those Giants. Quantez Stiggers from the Toronto Argonauts and Jalen Key, defensive back out of Alabama, is the Mr. Irrelevant pick. Do you know Quantez's story? His path to the NFL is one of the more unique than I think we will ever see, just about.
Yeah, this isn't one of the stories that I know, but obviously Toronto, seeing that he was from the CFL, I was watching the draft when that pick got made. That was surprising and pretty cool, but there's more of the story apparently, and I'm excited to kind of learn about that.
So he never played college football, actually. He was going to go in 2020. Forgive me, I forget which school he committed to. But unfortunately, his dad passed away. He stepped away from football, didn't play at all in 2021. 2022 played in the fan-controlled football league, balled out, had 5 interceptions, was tremendous. He got a tryout with the Toronto Argonauts. Thought he was kind of like an afterthought in the Canadian Football League, and then ended up winning essentially their equivalent of the Rookie of the Year. Had another 5 interceptions and was really, really good. And wasn't able to enter the NFL as a free agent. Had to enter through the entry level draft and ends up going in the 5th round. But really unique story for a guy who I think the Jets view as a corner who could transition to kind of like that ball hawking safety role, like a free safety spot, which is, I mean, Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh, they love the projects corner that they convert into safety, or the safety linebacker duo, which is something they normally target. But yeah, a really interesting story for Quantez Stiggers. Didn't know a ton about him in this draft process, but after reading that he was a CFL guy, dug a little bit deeper, and his path to the NFL pretty unique.
Yeah, definitely. And it's a pretty cool story. And you always love to see stuff like that, right? And it usually is a testament to character. And you want to have high quality guys, high character guys in your locker room. And seeing that somebody battled through adversity to make it to where they are is always something that can be inspiring for fans and also for teammates, and makes him probably a solid presence to have in the locker room as a late round pick here.
All right, let's toss a grade on this one before we get to the New York Giants. What are you thinking for the Jets here if you were to toss a letter grade on it?
I'm going to go with a B plus because I do really like the Fashanu selection. I think that was good value, especially trading down and getting some extra picks. I like Malachi Corley. I see the upside there, and I think getting him at 65 was a great deal. You know, I thought that he could have gone potentially a little bit higher than that. And I like Braylon Allen, as I broke down, and I really like the upside of Jordan Travis. The other 3 guys, again, don't know too much about them as prospects, but those first 4 selections should all have some sort of value to the team almost immediately, especially the first 2 should be on the field a lot as rookies. Braylon Allen should see some playing time and develop into a capable player within 2 seasons. And again, the upside of Jordan Travis as your long-term backup or maybe even succession plan the Rodgers. This is a pretty solid draft class. Not perfect, but it's a really good class. And I think B plus is a fair grade for them.
That's what I had as well, a B plus, and my draft grade video came out this morning. I really like the first 4 picks. I think that's my favorite, with Fashanu, Malachi Corley, Braylon Allen, Jordan Travis. I thought they got a little bit cute trading down so much in the 4th round and ending up with 3 5th-round picks. Don't love doubling up on the running back. I didn't think that was something that was really necessary. And the last 2 picks at defensive back, they kind of need some safety help. So not crazy surprising that being the route that they went here. I don't think it's going to be one of those historic draft classes we look back on like the 2022 class, but I think it's a solid one where they fill some needs, add some depth, and hopefully get a little bit of an impact here. Let's go to those New York Giants. Take a look at the draft class. Malik Nabers, as we know, goes in the 1st round. Tyler Nubin, safety out of Minnesota. Drew Phillips, corner out of Kentucky. Theo Johnson, tight end, Penn State. Tyrone Tracy, running back out of Purdue. And Darius Muaso, is that how you say it? Linebacker out of UCLA.
Honestly, still don't know how to say it. Still trying to figure that one out.
Okay. So initial takeaways. I know the last time we spoke was after the Malik Nabers pick. We're very excited about Malik Nabers to the New York Giants, but how about the rest of the class?
Yeah, one thing I'm happy the Giants didn't do was draft a quarterback outside of the 1st round. Obviously, everybody knows I wanted one in the 1st round. I wanted them to trade up for Drake May. They tried to. It just didn't work out. But if they would have went for a Spencer Rattler or Joe Milton between rounds 3 to 7, I would have been upset. I would have viewed that as almost a burnt and wasted draft pick that handcuffs you in the future. And so that's one thing that I'm going to praise Joe Schoen on. He had his guy that he wanted at the quarterback position, and when he couldn't get that guy, he didn't force it. And I think that is very important, not to force it on a Rattler again in the 3rd round. Let's just use him as an example. I know he went round 5, but a lot of Giants fans were pushing for him to be drafted in round 2, which was just ridiculous and would have been terrible value. So if the Giants would have went after a guy like a Spencer Rattler, then you end up in a situation similar to what I believe the Atlanta Falcons were in with Desmond Ridder, and they kind of handcuffed themselves and they weren't able to really develop their roster and find the QB the way that they wanted to. Now, obviously, things have changed. They got Kirk Cousins and even Michael Penix, which is crazy. But just the idea of forcing your team to stick with this mid-round quarterback because you think he has this upside is something that really scares me. So I'm happy the Giants didn't go in that direction. And then overall with this draft class, there's a lot of value in the first round selection, the second round selection. I really like the fourth round selection of Theo Johnson, the tight end. And I even think there's a lot of upside in Tyrone Tracy, the running back out of Purdue in round 5. So there are a lot of spots in this class that I'm excited by. I think there could have been better value on the board in a couple of those positions, but overall feeling good about Joe Schoen's draft class here.
Yeah, same thing. I really like Tyler Nubin was a borderline first round pick for a lot of people. So being able to land him when they did in the second round, I think was good value. And, unfortunately, you lose a really good safety in free agency, but able to bring one in who I think is going to have a really good shot to play right away and play some significant reps here. One of my favorite picks from this draft class is Theo Johnson, the tight end at a Penn State. A lot of questions about Darren Waller and his future with the New York Giants. Unfortunately, that one doesn't seem like it's going to be working out long term. But Theo, I think, is someone who could come in and give you some production right away. I'm not saying he's going to come in and be an 1,000-yard tight end, but can he come in and compete as a tight end too with some upside in year one and potentially develop from there? I think so. I really liked some of his tape at Penn State. One of the better tight ends in this class, and being able to land him where they did, I think was a good pick for New York.
Yeah, I actually think we could end up seeing Theo Johnson be a starter on this team this season. Maybe not, by week 1, but by week 8. I think Theo Johnson has that ability. One of the things that I love about that selection in particular, you mentioned it with Darren Waller. Will he be here? Will he not be? I am going to assume that he won't be. I think he will end up retiring. And at this point, even if he doesn't, the Giants need to just consider releasing him because I don't know about his commitment level and his level of productivity if he does play this season. But anyway, I digress on that. Theo Johnson's playing style is very similar to Darren Waller and what he brings to the table. So there's a little bit of continuity within the scheme that you can maintain, because you've got a lot of plays drawn up in this offense for Darren Waller. And Daniel Bellinger is just not the same athlete. He doesn't have the same playing style. His strengths are not the same strengths as Darren Waller. So our backup tight end, Daniel Bellinger, that is, you can't really ask him to do the exact same things that you would ask of Darren Waller. But with Theo Johnson, playing style is very similar. Athleticism is very similar. So he can run that Darren Waller role and play in that capacity. Now, I'm not saying he's the same talent level or he's going to be just as good, but he can do those same things. So you can ask him to play that Darren Waller role, which I think is great and keeps some continuity for Theo Johnson. And he's also an underrated blocker. And this is important because you've got Daniel Bellinger, who's a very good blocker, but last season, Daniel Bellinger was pretty much just stuck playing as an extra offensive tackle because of how bad our offensive line was. But Theo Johnson, you're not going to want him playing that role. So again, that's why he's probably going to be tight end 2 to start. But if this pass protecting unit for the Giants could start to hold up on its own without the chips from Bellinger or any other tight ends or fullbacks, whoever, I think Theo Johnson can start to get on the field a lot in 11 personnel, be that pass catching tight end that the Giants wanted Darren Waller to be, and make some pretty good plays. So I really like the potential of Theo Johnson, and I do think that he should be a starter on this team within his first 2 seasons.
Yeah, and I mean, that's great if you're able to find someone on day 3 who ends up becoming a starter for you. And I do think that is a path for him. As you said, maybe not as, at the beginning of the year in week 1, but as the season progresses, I think his playing time is only going to increase. Very talented kid. Wanted to get your thoughts on the running back, Tyrone Tracy, because as you mentioned, it seemed like the Giants had something specific in mind when they were going running back in this draft.
Yeah, Tyrone Tracy is a very interesting selection. I think I'm doing a full breakdown on him on Fireside Giants later today with Alex. But one of the things that I like about Tyrone Tracy, receiving ability, he is a wide receiver converted to running back at Purdue. One of the things I don't like is age. He is up there. I think he's already 25, maybe 26. I know that it's a high enough age to make you feel concerned with Tyrone Tracy. But you got to love the way that he played in his small sample size because he only played running back this past season. I think he had 114 carries, but he had 46 missed tackles. The guy is a tackle-breaking machine, and I liken him in a way to Malachi Corley. Malachi Corley, I think, was running back converted to receiver, if I'm not mistaken, and he's got that tackle-breaking ability. He's got that make plays in space ability. Tyrone Tracy, the same thing, just in the opposite way, was wide receiver. So he's got the ability to run routes better than most running backs. He's very shifty in that regard. He's got good hands, But then they put him in the backfield at Purdue, and he was able to make plays, be a very efficient runner there. So I think that there is a lot of dynamic ability to what Tracy can do in this offense. And behind Devin Singletary, it's basically Tracy and last year's 5th-round pick Eric Gray, and not a whole lot else. So he's got an opportunity to be RB2, get on the field in passing situations as a receiving back, but also to develop and become a pretty capable runner who gets a lot of playing time down the road, especially if Singletary gets injured. I would assume Tyrone Tracy would be the next man up. So I just love what we saw from him in that small sample size at Purdue. I watched a lot of his All-22 yesterday when I was kind of recapping the draft for myself, and he just plays with a mean streak, but he's just got really good contact balance. There are a lot of similarities in his game, again, like I said, to a guy like a Malachi Corley with that dynamic ability to impact both the rushing and the receiving game. So I do really like this selection. Again, not to overhype any of these picks later on day 3 for the Giants, but the upside is absolutely there with Tyrone Tracy, and I could see him playing a role in this offense, even as a rookie, and maybe even having a pretty solid impact long term.
Yeah, he's going to play as a rookie based on just the depth chart. Like Singletary is usually a nice complementary back. He's not really that workhorse guy, but between Tracy and Gray, I think I like Tracy's upside, and I think he's someone who should play. He's bigger back at 5'11", 209, it looks like. But he'll be 25 in November. So as you mentioned, an older prospect, but maybe doesn't have as much mileage on him because he wasn't a running back initially in his collegiate career. He was converted. So it's maybe he ages a little bit differently than some of these other running backs we see come into the league and are pretty much toasted by 27. I don't think that's necessarily going to be the case for him because he doesn't have as many reps, but that's someone who's, again, like a unique athlete. And that's kind of, I don't know. I think that was the direction the Giants wanted to go. They wanted a more athletic guy. And it seems obvious to me they want to go running back by committee. They're not necessarily looking for that pure workhorse guy after moving on from Saquon Barkley.
Yeah, and I think a committee is absolutely what we're going to see. And I like Singletary as the lead back. I think he can be kind of your grinder, your first and second down, pick up 3 to 5 yards a pop. And then when you need a little bit of a spark plug, I think Tyrone Tracy can absolutely be that with his ability to make plays out of the backfield as a receiver and also just to break tackles. So I really like that idea and that kind of concept of going with this committee for the Giants. I think that they should have had a committee even when they had Saquon Barkley. I thought they overplayed him in many instances, and you could definitely see him get gassed down the stretch in the final month of the season. I think even in 2022 in particular, that playoff run, those final 4 games, I thought that he really looked gassed, but I digress on that again. But I just think that the committee approach here is going to be the right way to go for the New York Giants, and Tyrone Tracy has a lot of ability to add into a committee.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he's going to be someone who's utilized a lot. And, that's 2 guys on the offensive side of the ball, and Theo Johnson and Tyrone Tracy on day 3 that I think are going to have an impact on this team, which is the signs of a good draft. Wanted to get your take on the 2 defensive guys. We haven't spent a lot of time on them yet. Drew Phillips and Darius Muasu, linebacker out of UCLA. What kind of role do you see both of those guys in?
Muasu, if that is how you say it, again, I'm still learning that one. I think he's probably going to be a core special teamer and Micah McFadden's backup. So essentially what I mean by that is Micah McFadden is a former 5th-round pick who's actually developed into a very high-quality starter for the New York Giants alongside Bobby Okereke in the middle of the field. But he's got, I think, 2 years left on his deal. So getting somebody who could develop behind him, be his backup just in case he does leave in free agency in 2 years, I think is the right approach here. So Muasu has a very similar playing style, is very quick to shoot gaps and get into the backfield, high play recognition kind of guy, and athletic guy, really just one of those who just runs into the backfield with a full head of steam. That's really what Micah McFadden was starting out his career, but he very much developed into a more refined player who wasn't just shooting gaps. Now he actually makes plays across the field, and I think that you could see similar playing style ability in McFadden and Muasu. So I think he's going to be his backup long term. And then who knows, maybe down the road, see if he gets an opportunity to stay on the field. But he should be a core special teamer as well. And then the Andrew Phillips selection is an interesting one. That's the one that I'm the most underwhelmed by, I would say. I think out of all of these picks, I felt like maybe there was better talent on the board in round 3 that could have been better used elsewhere. To me, that felt like Joe Schoen saying, we need a cornerback. Let's just take our highest rated one on the board. So he kind of forced it based on need rather than value of the draft board. I thought that it was a fine selection, but again, when you hit with Malik Neighbors in round 1 and then Tyler Nubin having, a potential first round projection, getting him all the way at 47, you wanted to see another value selection like that in round 3. And I just thought Drew Phillips was fine value. And there are some concerns to his game. He's very small, slender frame. Yeah, he's very physical and he's a great tackler, but he's not probably going to play on the outside at cornerback for the Giants. So it's almost like they filled a need, but did they fill the need? Because now they got another nickel in here in Andrew Phillips. But a lot of Giants fans, myself included, liked Cordell Flott and thought that he could develop into the nickel. Another undersized guy. He struggles at tackling, though, where Andrew Phillips excels. So a little bit of an upgrade there on the slot, but I still don't know who's playing outside cornerback for the Giants. I guess Nick McLeod or Trey Hawkins will be the front runners for this. Maybe a veteran in free agency. Still unsure about that. So it filled a need, but not the need, and it felt like a need-based selection. So again, not my favorite, but you could definitely see instant starting potential for Andrew Phillips in the slot. I think that he probably will be our nickel cornerback. And hey, maybe Cordell Flott then develops into the outside. Maybe that's where they try him. But I thought that it was a little bit of an underwhelming selection compared to some of the rest.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time on cornerback for the New York Giants, and the second round was a sweet spot. They end up getting, a safety there, but again, good value in Nubin is someone who was ranked very high by a lot of NFL draft scouts. But I agree with you that this one kind of felt forced because, yes, corner was a massive need for them. But as you said, I don't really see Phillips as an outside corner unless he really develops at the next level. I think he's probably going to be someone who plays in the slot, which is fine. That's, valuable in today's NFL when we see a lot of 3 wide sets from offenses in the league. But as you mentioned, who is this team's corner to? They have a very good number 1 corner on the outside, but I think that's going to be a major, major question mark for this team. And I just don't really feel all that confident or comfortable with the players that they have on this roster, unless one of them just takes a massive leap going into 2024.
Yeah, and I'm with you on that one. I think, though, the one player that I'll say is the sleeper for that CB2 job is Nick McLeod. I do recall in the end of the regular season last year versus Philadelphia, we won that game. A.J. Brown, I think, got injured on a tackle from Nick McLeod, and I'm not highlighting that, but his performance leading up to that injury against A.J. Brown was very impressive. He did a great job over the middle of the field defending A.J. Brown, so that might be the Giants' solution there at CB2. But hey, now we have our solution at safety, which I think is huge. Getting Tyler Nubin in the second round. Again, one of those picks that I have mixed emotions over because I think the value is tremendous, right? This is a guy who is projected to go as early as pick number 22 in some mock drafts. They get him all the way at 47, number 31 overall on PFF's big board, number 1 safety on pretty much everybody's big boards and rankings. So he fell in the draft, I think, due to a little bit of a knee injury that he had, created some athletic testing concerns for him during the combine. But this guy has talent. He's a ball hawk. He's a playmaker in the defensive backfield, and he is the Xavier McKinney replacement. My only issue with this is it's the Xavier McKinney replacement in the second round of the draft. If the Giants were real adamant about going by positional value and not paying a second round safety and not over investing into the position, taking the safety in round 2 just felt like drafting for need and didn't feel like maximizing that positional value once again. So it just feels like a retread, like we're going 1 step forward, 2 steps back in a way. And I was a little confused by the thought process on the selection. However, you do have to admit, if you're going best player available, you can absolutely make the case that he was the best player available. But I think that's why he was available is because he's a safety and the positional value needed to be factored in. So again, a little bit of mixed emotions on this one, but Tyler Nubin at the end all be all, great player, far better than where he was drafted at 47. It should be really an instant impact player for the New York Giants.
All right, there you go. Let's slap a grade on this one for the New York Giants. We're at B+, both on B+ for the Jets. Where do you stand for the Giants as this draft class as a whole?
Yeah, I'm going B because I think that I struggle to see the vision in that third round draft pick and Andrew Phillips, again, like we discussed in terms of him being a nickel versus finding an outside cornerback. And I do still have question marks about a safety in round 2, albeit a great one and a player who's going to make a lot of plays for us probably as a rookie. I think almost all of these guys should see playing time as rookies, though, and that's something to be excited about. Probably getting instant impact from this draft class. So it's at least a B for me. It's probably higher for others. But again, I thought in rounds 2 and 3, you could kind of find some extra value on the draft board if you did a little bit more searching. But overall, really solid class.
Yeah, I was going to be at a B+ for this one also, same as the New York Jets grade that I gave out. The Malik Neighbors one at the top really, really helps this draft class a ton. I think he's going to be an immediate impact guy. I know the Giants have question marks at quarterback, but similarly to Garrett Wilson, where he just came into the league and it didn't matter how bad the quarterback play was, he's going to be productive. Nubin I really liked as a player. I think he was talented enough to go in the first round. I get the positional value argument, but it was also kind of really a big need for the Giants. So filling 2 needs at the top, I think, is big. And the fact that you're going to get 2 guys in Theo Johnson and Tyrone Tracy on day 3 who are going to come in and play for you right away, most likely, and play pretty significant reps is another thing that makes this an above average draft for me. Don't love the Drew Phillips pick, and honestly don't know enough about Darius Muasu at the end to really comment, but probably, as you mentioned, a good a special team kind of player there. But just a solid draft I'm at for both of these New York teams. I don't think either one really blew it out of the water, and we're going to look back and say, wow, what an amazing draft class. But I don't think they missed the mark either. I think they came away and did a pretty adequate job to fill some needs and depth on both their rosters.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you there. And I actually see a lot of potential for this Giants draft class too. One day, like 3 years down the line, we might say, wow, they did blow it out of the water. It's really going to depend on that 4th and 5th round selection, though. Theo Johnson, how much does he end up playing? Does he become a starting tight end? Because if we end up with a starting receiver in round 1, starting safety in round 2, and that tight end in the 4th round pans into a starter, I mean, that's a great draft class. And then again, let's see with Tyrone Tracy, the running back with a lot of dynamic ability. So the potential is definitely there for this Giants draft class. But overall, I will say both of these teams got better and found instant impact players who should contribute right away on the football field. So both New York teams got better this weekend. And I think there's a lot to be excited about for the 2024 season.
Absolutely excited to now move on from the NFL draft. A lot of fun time spent on it, a lot of time covering it. What's next? Any predictions for what happens next before we talk again on Thursday?
This won't be a prediction for what happens before we talk again on Thursday, but I do want to kind of call out one thing that I mentioned before the draft was a lot of Giants fans really wanted the team to maybe make a run at Brandon Ayuk, trade the number 47 pick and get Ayuk there and, try your best to get a QB in round 1, force that. One of the things I said was, I think there's a great chance Ayuk doesn't get traded until way after the NFL draft. Maybe you're talking 2025 draft capital. So if the Giants feel like continuing to add playmakers around Daniel Jones and they want to maybe make a second splash here, like I said, I think at training camp, if there's still an unresolved contract situation, whether it be with Ayuk or Higgins or Sutton, one of these receivers around the league, I think that you could see a training camp trade. Some team makes a splash. I'm not necessarily saying the Giants will be that team, but knowing Joe Schoen and his aggression and his love for making trades, there is potentially an opportunity here for my prediction from way long ago being right, where maybe a training camp wide receiver trade happens and the Giants could add some more playmaking talent through that end. So, because I know that Giants fans, a few of them did want to see the team double dip at receiver, knowing that Darius Slayton long-term, his contract is unresolved. We'll see what we can get from him and whether or not we extend him. So yeah, maybe around the league, not a lot of player trades other than the one the Jets made, of course, which we didn't even get into, but not a lot of player trades around the league. And we'll see if a wide receiver ends up becoming available on the market soon enough.
Oh yeah, we could end there briefly. I'm bummed out about the John Franklin Myers trade. I get that it was the need for a cap dump essentially, but still on the hook for $9 million. It frees up 7. Him playing for 16 would have been tough, but that would have been a restructure candidate for me. Like, I don't know. I just think he's been one of the more underrated Jets over the last 4 years. His numbers don't really pop off the page, but he's great against the run. He always ranks pretty high among pressures. It doesn't really convert in the sack department, but just a really useful piece that you're moving off of for a 2025 or 2026 6th round pick. Stuff.
Yeah, not my favorite move either. And I think that one of the things we've discussed was depth on the front seven for the New York Jets and how they really did a great job building that up. And now I feel like they kind of hurt their depth here pretty badly with this move. So, mixed emotions on that one as well. Obviously, like you said, they needed to do it because they needed to clear some cap space, but maybe they could have found another way to do that.
Yep. No, I'm with you on that one. A little frustrating, but we'll get through it. Maybe they get a Hassan Reddick extension done, and that feels a little bit nicer. But for now, I think that's going to do it for us on this episode. A lot to get into with the draft stuff we covered today. We'll be back on Thursday with more draft fallout and anything else, both New York Jets and New York Giants related. So make sure to follow along Anthony's work over at Fireside Giants. I'm over at Talking Jets and Matt O'Leary NY on YouTube. That'll do it for us. I'm Matt. He's Anthony, and we'll catch you next time.